We are getting some breaking news in the investigation into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie.
Before we go any further, take a second and subscribe. Because in this video, we're going to tackle the question that has haunted this case from the very beginning. Why Nancy? Why this house? Why this family? For more than a month, FBI profilers have been analyzing every detail connected to this case. And now, some of the answers they've uncovered could completely change how you look at what happened. Nancy Guthrie is still missing. She is 84 years old, a great-grandmother, a woman who struggled to walk without assistance, someone who depended on daily medication to survive, someone whose heart relied on a pacemaker to keep beating. And yet, someone chose her. Not randomly, not by chance. They chose her deliberately. Since February 1st, investigators have been trying to understand one simple but disturbing question. Why would someone target an elderly woman living alone in a quiet Tucson neighborhood? What did they want? And what does their choice of victim reveal about the person behind this crime? FBI profilers believe the answers to those questions may reveal the mindset of the suspect, and those answers may change everything. Let's begin with a question that former FBI agent Jim Fitzgerald raised during an interview on Megyn Kelly's show. He asked something very direct. Why did this happen around 2 o'clock in the morning? Think about that moment. Not noon, not the evening. Not when Nancy might have been outside running errands or visiting a doctor. 2 in the morning, the hour when neighborhoods fall completely silent, when lights are off and everyone is asleep, when someone who has planned carefully knows they can move without being seen. Fitzgerald also pointed out something else that investigators find deeply revealing. A reward of $1 million has been offered for information. And still, silence. According to Fitzgerald, that silence suggests something important. Whoever committed this crime wanted Nancy Guthrie specifically. Not her belongings, not money inside the house. Her. And that leads to 2 very different possibilities that profilers are now examining. Mary Ellen O'Toole, a former senior FBI profiler and former director within the Behavioral Analysis Unit, now a forensic science professor at George Mason University, explained that investigators must keep 2 separate theories open. And the first possibility is this: Nancy was targeted because she is the mother of Savannah Guthrie. The second possibility: Nancy was targeted simply because she appeared vulnerable. 2 very different motivations, 2 very different kinds of offenders, and 2 very different psychological profiles. O'Toole describes this as the critical fork in the investigation, because whichever path is correct determines how investigators search for the suspect. Let's start with the first path. The idea that Nancy was taken because of her connection to Savannah. Former FBI agent and CIA officer Tracy Walder publicly supported this theory. She said she does not believe this was a burglary gone wrong. Instead, she pointed to the precision of the crime, the way it appears calculated and intentional. Walder suggested that the person responsible may have been angry with Savannah Guthrie, or possibly obsessed with her. And if someone wanted to hurt a well-known public figure who is constantly surrounded by security, there is one devastating way to do it. You target someone they love. In this case, her mother. Walder also made something very clear. None of this would be Savannah's fault. But from a profiler's perspective, the connection cannot be ignored. Another former FBI special agent, Greg Rogers, approached the case from a different angle but reached a similar conclusion. He rejected the theory that this was a simple robbery. According to Rogers, the details don't match a crime of opportunity. A robbery usually depends on chance, but a targeted kidnapping suggests something very different: planning, preparation, and sometimes familiarity with the victim. That could mean the person responsible knew details about Nancy Guthrie that a stranger wouldn't know. Her routine, her health condition, her pacemaker when she went to bed. Might when the neighborhood became quiet. In other words, someone may have studied her. Now there's another detail that Mary Ellen O'Toole noticed while reviewing the doorbell camera footage from the night Nancy disappeared. What stood out to her wasn't just what the suspect did, it was how calm he appeared while doing it. When profilers examine video like this, they often ask a simple question: does the offender appear nervous? Because most people committing a serious crime would show signs of anxiety, hesitation, quick movements, tension, but in this footage, O'Toole said something surprising. The suspect didn't appear nervous at all. His movements were controlled. His posture looked steady. He spent time on the porch without showing the panic most people would feel. That level of calm suggests two possibilities. Why either this person has committed similar crimes before, or they had imagined this moment so many times in their mind that when it finally happened, it felt almost routine. The fantasy had already played out. Now let's consider the second path investigators are examining. What if Nancy wasn't targeted because of her daughter at all? What if she was chosen simply because she seemed vulnerable? 84 years old, limited mobility, living alone, dependent on medication and a pacemaker. From a predator's perspective, that profile represents something disturbing. Low resistance, someone unlikely to fight back, someone who cannot easily run, someone whose home is quiet and isolated. Former FBI profiler Jim Clemente suggested another possibility. The suspect may have learned about Nancy during normal, everyday interactions, maybe through repair work, plumbing, electrical service, roofing, pool cleaning, yard maintenance, package deliveries, even rideshare drivers. Anyone who visited the house, even briefly, might have noticed that an elderly woman lived there alone. And for someone with the wrong intentions, that observation could become an opportunity. But here's where both theories might actually overlap. Greg McCrary, one of the original architects of modern FBI criminal profiling, suggested something that connects the two ideas. The suspect might have been both a predator and someone obsessed with the Guthrie family. Someone who noticed Nancy during everyday life, then later discovered that she was Savannah Guthrie's mother. From that moment, the fixation could have grown, a famous daughter, a vulnerable mother. In the mind of the offender, those two things might have merged into one disturbing plan. McCrary says investigators pay close attention when certain patterns appear. And if someone matching the suspect's description suddenly changes their routine, if someone who previously talked about the Guthrie family becomes unusually quiet, if someone disappears from their normal life after the date of the crime, those are the kinds of details that need to be reported immediately. Now, there's another element that profilers find extremely important: media attention. Now, Mary Ellen O'Toole mentioned that offenders like this are often closely watching the coverage of their crimes. She compared this behavior to the Zodiac killer, who famously sent letters to newspapers and seemed to crave attention from the public and investigators. In this case, the suspect reportedly delivered a ransom message to a news station. He contacted TMZ. He made demands that he knew would become public. That suggests something beyond money. It suggests he wanted the world to see what he had done. He wanted headlines, he wanted attention. And most likely, he is still watching every update, including this one. Now let's talk about one piece of evidence investigators are still analyzing: the backpack seen in the doorbell footage, a 25-liter Ozark Trail backpack. Originally, investigators believed this might lead directly to a purchase at Walmart, where the product is sold. But Sheriff Chris Nanos later pointed out something important. Just because a product is sold at Walmart doesn't mean it was purchased there. Items like that can easily appear on eBay, Facebook Marketplace, garage sales, secondhand stores, which means tracing the original buyer may be far more complicated. Either the suspect planned for that possibility, or they simply got lucky. But investigators are still following that trail. But another critical piece of forensic evidence may come from something small but significant: the suspect's mouth. Despite wearing a ski mask and gloves, the mask did not completely cover his mouth. According to Jim Clemente, that could mean saliva or breath left behind trace DNA. And that kind of DNA can sometimes be analyzed through genetic genealogy databases. This is the same method investigators used to identify the Golden State Killer decades after his crimes. Even if the suspect's DNA isn't in a criminal database, distant relatives might be. From there, investigators can build family trees and narrow the search down to a single individual. There may also be another identifying detail in the footage: a possible tattoo. At one point, when the suspect's clothing shifts slightly, something appears briefly on his body that could be ink. Tattoos can be incredibly useful clues. Certain styles are linked to specific regions. Some are associated with gangs. Others can even be traced back to particular tattoo artists. Investigators are analyzing every frame of that footage, because even one recognizable detail could dramatically narrow the list of suspects. Before we reach the final point, make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. In the next video, we'll break down the full behavioral profile experts believe describes the person responsible for this crime, warning signs, personality traits, and the behaviors people around him may have already noticed. Now,